Okay, here is a comment and a question. An individual writes this under one of my videos. I really appreciate and admire your work. Regards to the diabetes videos, but you almost never mention any supplements, apple cider vinegar, cinnamon, chromium, berberine, moringa powder, and a few others. Does this mean you don't think they work and we'll be wasting our money on them? Or do you think that they do work to a degree but are not helpful as they hide the real A1C numbers and make them artificially low while you take the supplements? Do supplements work? Some of them can, some of them cannot. I'm not convinced that cinnamon does much. I know people swear by it and some people say it does, but I haven't found that cinnamon does much. And apple cider vinegar is not exactly an herbal supplement, but whatever it is, it apparently can help. And he asked, do you think they don't work? I would say no. I think some of them work to different degrees. He said, or do you think they do work, but they hide the real A1C number and make your numbers artificially low? I kind of lean that way. So your real problem for type 2 diabetics is typically insulin resistance. You just don't process carbs very well. Now, there are meds called sulfonylureas that essentially squeeze your pancreas and force it to release more insulin. And so that's not all that different from taking insulin itself. In both cases, you get more insulin. But for a lot of type 2s, I would say most, your problem is not that you lack insulin. Your problem is you don't process it well. Now, it may well be that some of these herbal supplements or some of these natural glucose-lowering herbs or whatever they are may work the same way, forcing your insulin or your glucose artificially down, but not really fixing the main problem. And it seems to me the number one thing we want to do is fix the main problem. With that being said, I will admit, I mentioned I take about 3 bitter melon tablets a week, sometimes a couple more. And I do take berberine. Berberine has a lot of good properties. I've almost never heard anybody say anything bad about berberine. I'm sure, having said that in this video, somebody will remind me that there is somebody that once said something bad about it. But most of the people that talk about berberine are all very positive, not only in terms of lowering glucose, but in terms of blood pressure and just a number of things. It's supposed to be helpful. And I do take usually 1 berberine tablet per day. And that's, I think, 600 milligrams. So that's what I do. There's really 2 problems for the diabetic. One is high glucose, and one is high insulin. Now, the glucose is fixed the more easily. You can take insulin, boom, you no longer have high glucose. You've got higher insulin, but lesser glucose. There have been studies done where they just encouraged diabetics to get their glucose down any way they could, and in most cases they used insulin, extra insulin, more insulin, double the insulin or whatever it was, and they started dying and they had to stop the studies. And they found that people who take extra insulin often, type 2s I'm talking about, not type 1s, but type 2s that take extra insulin or more insulin or just take insulin, they don't do very well in terms of health or in terms of all-cause mortality. They tend to die sooner. Not everybody, of course. So just saying, I'm going to take all these supplements, I'm going to take chromium, I'm going to take berberine, I'm going to take apple cider vinegar, and I'm going to take bitter melon, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and you just do all that. You take all those supplements, and maybe it does go down a bit, or maybe more than a bit. But if your pancreas is still forced to put out a lot of insulin, maybe even these supplements make your pancreas put out even more insulin. I'm not so sure you've done yourself a total favor. So my approach is, yeah, we want to bring our glucose down. There is a problem with high glucose. Some people suggest high glucose doesn't mean anything. The whole thing is insulin. So just worry about your insulin. Don't worry about your glucose. High glucose is a problem. It does have its own health risks, separate and apart from high insulin. So bringing glucose down is normally a good thing if you're not either A, ingesting lots of insulin, or B, taking high-powered meds that will force insulin release from your own pancreas. So there's nothing wrong with taking some mild supplements that are going to maybe bring it down a bit. But in my mind, if you rely entirely on supplements, you're not fixing the whole problem, and you need to solve the root problem, which is insulin resistance. And typically, supplements don't do much to insulin resistance. They might make you more insulin sensitive. They might make your pancreas work a little harder, but they don't normally deal with the insulin resistance. Here's a person who says, I went to browse in a store close to my home and found a plastic bag marked insulin-diabetic. Well, that's a weird thing to see in a normal store. I mean, insulin is sold by pharmacies. It's not sold in some store. But here's a little plastic bag says insulin-diabetic. When I asked for more information, the gal said it was from India. I bought one small bag for $5. Well, again, that's too weird. You can't buy insulin for $5. So this obviously was not insulin. They must have marketed that as a PR campaign to make you buy it. You see the words insulin-diabetic and aha, that's what I need. $5 for a small bag. The instructions were to take a pinch of herbs in hot water once in the morning and one at night. So again, that's not insulin. What these was supplements. So far, this individual says, it looks like my blood sugar is running 30 to 50 points less. Well, that's pretty impressive. If having some tea twice a day, one in the morning, one at night, and now your blood sugar is 30 to 50 points less than it used to be, something's going on. And I have no doubt there are herbs that can really do that sort of a thing. And this apparently was a pretty powerful combination. Almost too powerful, really. It's kind of like that advanced glucose formula that I tried for a while. It was just too powerful, and I just shied away. It's like, I'll do it the normal way. So we want lower glucose for sure, and high glucose is damaging, but we also want lower insulin, and we don't want to mask high insulin with low glucose. We want to, and I honestly think there are some people who are doing that with the whole foods, plant-based, all plants diet. What they end up with is severe spikes and then crashes and spikes and then crashes and spikes and then crashes. And if you average out between the spikes and the crashes, it comes out to a pretty decent A1C, and they say, aha, I have fixed my diabetes. My A1C is 5.6, 5.8, whatever. Somewhere in the fives. I've beat diabetes that way. But when you've got these severe spikes and crashes and spikes and crashes, you've got a whole lot of insulin release going on that's really making that happen. Your body's not supposed to have those kind of glucose crashes, those craters, those mountain peaks and then immediate drop down. That's not normal. It's supposed to be a milder rise and a milder lowering of your glucose. So you may think, I have really done it. I've got a decent A1C, but if it spikes and crashes all day long, every day, every week, every month, every year, you probably got a whole lot of insulin going on there, and it's really not a healthy situation. So again, the natural way is the best. If you want to take some apple cider vinegar here and there, I've got no problem with that. Dabble with some supplements and herbal things, that's fine. But when they can drop your glucose 50 points from before, might be a little bit too powerful. And I think I would probably avoid that. But, we're all in this on our own, so to speak. We've got to do what seems right to us. But my feeling is get to the root. And the root typically for most type 2 diabetics is fatty liver and fatty pancreas. Visceral fat. Even if you're not physically fat, you've got skinny arms and you're just not really a super big person. But if you've got that visceral fat, that organ fat, all around your pancreas, all around your liver, that's a real problem, and that's creating the insulin resistance, probably more than any other single factor. And as you starve that fat off. You don't have to starve yourself, but just go low carb and do some intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, and lose that fat. And you may find out I don't need to take all these supplements. Probably most of you know my wife Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos, where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body, and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach. And of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.